David Edward and Ryan Lilly discuss Ryan's new book, Ecosystem Hacking.
Ryan,
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
you wrote a book.
I did.
That's fantastic. Is it called Ecosystem Hacking?
That's the title, yes.
What is ecosystem hacking?
So it is a title that creates some interest, isn't it? It is a book about how communities can help entrepreneurs, how we can grow more small businesses in our communities. And it comes from really 10 years of doing this work in 3 different states. And ecosystem refers to a community of entrepreneurs. That's a fancy word that we're using nowadays. And hacking is all about how can we do something faster. So a lot of people hear hacking and they think about programming or computer hacking, but you might have also heard it used in different contexts like biohacking and how can we improve our health. Well, in this case, we're talking about how can we grow our entrepreneurial communities even faster. And so that's what it's all about.
Well, and that's how you and I met. We met in an entrepreneurial community. Now, though, I have to go back and check. I'm a little nervous you've been hacking me. Not that I still fully know what that means. It sounds scary, actually. But I know what you're going for. So how do you come up with that title? That's a very, to your point, it's a very intriguing title. How do you land on that?
It is. So, in the sort of industry that I'm in economic development and in working with entrepreneurs, it's kind of a niche industry. That's really just a term that has bubbled up over the last few years, this ecosystem.
Ecosystem, yeah.
And, a lot of people think of it like an environmental ecosystem. And in fact, I sometimes get people emailing me interested in my book, and they think it has something to do with the environment. I kind of tell them, what the definition means to me. And so it's about how can we grow our entrepreneurial communities, these ecosystems, in a faster way.
So what inspired you to undertake writing a book like this?
Yeah, so I had an opportunity in 2016 to do a TED Talk. And the TED Talk
Oh,
was really about this exact topic, about helping entrepreneurs and what I had discovered in my work doing that over the last decade. And after I got done with the TED Talk, I would go to conferences or I would meet with peers in my industry, and they would say, "Hey, that was an interesting talk you gave. I wish there was some way you could expand on that a little more. Give us some more details, some more stories, and things that you've experienced." And that's really what inspired me to write the book, was to help people in my industry in other cities and in other countries, even around the world, really understand how to help entrepreneurs most effectively.
Ryan, TED Talk's a pretty big deal.
It is. So it was actually a community TED Talk called a TEDx event,
Okay.
which is really a tip for any of your listeners who are writers to consider looking at. TEDx events are regional events held in small to medium-sized metros. And I was fortunate enough to speak at one here, and it goes online. You can find them on YouTube in the same way that you can find those major TEDx events. But it's a lot of fun and a great way to promote your message.
Well, and I've seen you speak. If I ever do a focused on public speaking, I'll be sure to have you back on because you're one of the better speakers that I've ever come across.
Oh, well,
So,
thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so
sure.
much.
Yeah. Okay, so what was going on in your life and what was your process for starting the book? And then, just kind of, what did your writing process look like? How long did it take you? Did you write on a page count, a topic count, a word count, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff?
One of the things that I experimented with early on was dictation. So I had heard from some other
Oh,
people who had written books on their way to work in the morning, on their commute. They would bring a tape recorder with them, or nowadays we have recorders on our phones, and she would just record herself on her way to work, and then she would send that audio file to a company that would transcribe it for her, a transcription company. And
wow.
she had one that had a very low rate for transcription services. So I experimented with that for a little while, and really didn't find that it worked personally for me. A lot of times in the process of writing, would pause, or I would have to think about how I was going to say something, and so that just didn't really work that great for a dictation format. So the next thing I really did was develop an outline, and I found that that's what worked best for me, especially as a nonfiction writer, was to create a detailed outline of exactly the chapters, the subheadings, and then really just go in and fill in that outline, and that's kind of how I built the book. Um, I found that deadlines were very powerful for me. I quickly saw that if I set both short-term and long-term deadlines for when I hope to have certain chapters finished, as well as when I hope to have ultimately the book finished, that was really effective because I could put it on my calendar. I had a big wall calendar that showed several months at a time, and I could really plan out that way my progress, and so that helped a lot. I also, in terms of, no, this isn't so much to your question of writing, but just creating the book itself, I did a lot in terms of cover design myself.
Okay.
I had, gone to iStock Photo and found some things. In earlier stuff that I had done, I had actually worked with cover designers and crowdsourced design, and didn't really feel that worked great for me, and also was still quite expensive. So
Yeah.
just using what little graphic design skills I have and finding stock photos worked really well.
I don't know if I might have to edit out crappy, by the way, but
Oh, okay.
I'm kidding. They say all kinds of stuff on YouTube, so
Oh,
it's okay.
good. That's good.
Sorry.
But so yeah, that was kind of my process. Putting I was all self-published, so I didn't have a publisher, and really discovering the Amazon KDP and this. It used to be called Create Space, the
Right.
paperback stuff. Finding out all of that and doing research on that throughout the process, and I think the biggest thing that I could have done differently is editing. So I made the mistake of really trying to edit the book myself and going through
Okay.
and rereading it and trying to catch my own spelling and grammar errors. And if I could do over, and when I write my next book, that will definitely be one part of my writing process that I have somebody help me with professionally, would be editing. Just because I really think it's hard to catch your own mistakes, and you really need that second set of eyes to help you to find those.
No, I agree. I have a good editor. I think I've broken her spirit a little bit with the amount of work she has to do on every page I write. But if you ever want, I can turn you over to her. She's pretty good.
That would be great.
But yeah, I hear that a lot, and I agree with that. By the way, that it's the one thing. It's hard to eat your own dog food or read your own dog food, however you want to say it.
Right.
So interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, did you write on a page count? I mean, how long did it take you?
So it took me about 5 months to get to a first draft, and then once I
Okay.
had that first draft, about another month of trying to edit it myself. I didn't write on a word count or a page count. I basically set aside time every day, an hour block of time to work on it. I know that some people are morning writers, some write in
Yep.
the afternoon or in the evening. I'm very much a night owl, so I
Really?
I cannot jump out of bed and work or do writing. I have to sort of get going first. But I remember working on my book late into the night, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and for some reason, just for me personally, that's when have felt most sort of creative and able to write. I've always admired people who are morning writers. I read a book by a gentleman named Hal Elrod called The Miracle Morning, and he's written several books under that heading. One of them is called The Miracle Morning for Writers, and it's all about how to get up early and write. And I tried that for a long time. I did my hardest at it, but it just didn't work for me. So again, I'm a night owl and go to 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning.
Now, how did you figure that out? Because I agree, all the advice out there is right in the morning. I've never heard any other advice other than that. Not that it works for everyone, but how did you learn? I mean, didn't you get weren't you nervous? Like you're trying to write in the morning, it's not happening, and you're like, oh, I might not be good at this.
Yeah.
But then you found your niche.
I really think it goes to when you are most creative and productive personally. And I think that varies for everybody. It might be in the afternoon, it might be during your lunch break. I found out just by trial and error, just getting up several mornings in a row and just not feeling it, and then saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to try writing at a different time, writing at nighttime. And really just, after midnight especially, I have a young child, and, she's running around during the day around the house and stuff, and I've got other stuff going on. But at night, it's quiet. I have this peace and this space around me. I'm able to come into my office and just write. And so that's when I found it's most easy for me.
And by your office, you mean you have a dedicated place at home set up where you're
I
writing?
do, yeah. I have a home office here with a desk, and I'm able to shut the door. I've got a lot of my favorite books in this room. So my wife and I are big readers. Before I ever started writing, I was a big reader. And we have a little app on our phone that actually tracks our personal home library. And believe it or not, we don't have a big house. We've got an average size house, but we have over 3,000 books. And so, not only is our several of our front rooms and our living room filled with books, but my personal office here has some of my favorite books, and I've got some rare and collectible books in here, some autographed copies from authors that I like. And I just feel really inspired in this space because I have those favorite authors around me, and every once in a while, if I feel maybe some writer's block coming on or something, I can turn to one of their books and just kind of look to it for inspiration. So.
I think that's important. I'm the same way. I finally, once I set a space up that was right for me, it's a little different than your space, but I think everyone's space is going to be different. But I think that's an important part of this. Did you ever get stuck? Were you ever sitting in there at 2 in the morning, you can't sleep, and yet you're not typing?
I do sometimes. I think that with this particular book, I didn't experience writer's block that often just because I was writing a lot from personal experience. I was telling personal stories,
Yeah.
ways that I've worked in different communities, how I've helped entrepreneurs. And so for me, it just sort of came out naturally. But yeah, I still did experience writer's block occasionally, and I find that in those cases, the best thing I can do is just sort of leave the environment for a bit. So get up out of my office, walk around the house. Maybe I have to be careful because I don't want to, start like a Netflix show and get too taken away and too distracted. But just basically get out of my environment and then come back and try again.
Yeah, 2 a.m. Netflix is a dangerous
That is
thing for a writer that writes at
That's a
night.
downward spiral for sure.
Did you learn anything? Because this isn't your first book. Did you learn anything while writing this one that you wish you had known on some of your other ones, or that you're definitely going to take forward that people might be interested in?
Absolutely. I think, first of all, what I mentioned about using a good editor, that was definitely one of my lessons. I also think, you know, not being too hard on myself. I'm someone who's typically, holds myself to a high standard. So when I didn't hit certain deadlines that I had created for myself, I would get kind of, a little bit down about that or hard on myself. And I think just, having that grace or forgiveness with yourself throughout the process and still, forging ahead with your goals are important.
Is there anything that
Yeah. Or no, go ahead.
is there anything that surprised you about the process of getting the book out?
The thing that surprised me the most was how much interest I've had internationally in my book compared to here in the
Okay.
US. So I wrote the book really with the intention of helping other people in a similar role as me that work helping entrepreneurs in cities around the world. It really, well, actually, I thought originally around the country. I wasn't even thinking that anyone around the world would be interested in this. And one of the things I did, in addition to having the book on Amazon, was to create a website just for the book. And anyone who was interested in having a copy could order it from me direct from the site. And it was only $10, which basically covered my printing cost and I thought US shipping to somebody, and that I would kind of break even on that. Well, it turns out I had in the first 6 months over 100 orders from people internationally. And the website, it wasn't even configured
Oh,
that way at first. I had to go in and change some of the stuff. And it was funny because in most cases I would pay $20 or $30 shipping to someone somewhere like Saudi Arabia, and I would actually be losing money. It seems on the covering my costs. But I really saw it as one, an opportunity to help somebody in the industry, and secondly, and this sounds somewhat self-serving, but from maybe opening the door for consulting for myself, potential leads from people who may want to work with me or have me come speak in their community. I saw it as kind of a marketing expense in that way. But
yeah.
it was interesting though. I had orders from Germany, from all over Europe, from as I mentioned, the Middle East, and it surprised me because the book wasn't even translated into any other language
I was going to
as
ask. Yeah,
English.
yeah.
I know that KDP has some of that capability, but I was sending out. They wanted physical copies in the mail sent to them,
Yeah.
and so that really surprised me. But I was humbled to really to see that there was this international desire. I think in some countries. Maybe they're a little bit further behind in developing these entrepreneurial communities, and so they just needed that extra help in understanding what it's all about.
Well, and your book, topic-wise, is very current and mainstream right now. because I know I call you. I don't think you like it when I do, but I call you the mayor of Florida because anytime I'm like, all right, how do I get a hold of this person, or how, what do I think about this? I send you a little note, and then you always write back with really good advice, and you usually have a contact. That's the whole ecosystem thing, right?
Exactly. An ecosystem is all about connections, and to me, how well an entrepreneur is able to get going in a community is all dependent on how quickly they can make valuable connections, not only to potential customers, but to partners and suppliers and to everybody else, investors, and all the people they need to help them. That all goes back to connections, and it's true in the writer world as well. I mean, how successful you are as a writer, I think, depends on the connections that you're able to establish to customers and the people that can help you.
Yeah, especially if you're doing business books that are kind of part of your core offering, core services offering. Yeah. That's wildly interesting. We'll put a link to your book below the podcast, and I'm sure dozens and dozens of people will see this. So hopefully more. That was a joke. That was my podcast joke. So just to wrap this up, what advice would you have for someone who's kind of stumbled onto this video and is thinking about trying to take maybe some of their professional experience, because it's kind of cutting edge, which honestly is where you are, and wrap it up into a book? What advice would you have for them on how to get it from, I always say, from up here, to out here?
So a few pieces of advice, and I've kind of written them down here off to the side. One is that there's a concept, and this actually comes from Japan, called Ikigai. And I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, but it's spelled Ikigai, Ikigai. And this concept is usually applied to people who are considering what career direction to go into. I've applied it in my work to people who are deciding what business to start. They know that they want to be an entrepreneur, but they don't know what to do. I think that this also applies, though, to your listeners and to people who are writers when thinking about what should I be writing. And so if you can Google Ikigai, and it'll pull up this image of what it looks like. It's basically a Venn diagram made up of 4 circles. One of them is what do you know? What are you good at? One of them is what do you love to do? The next is what does the world need most? And in business, we would call that market demand, or in the writing world, what do people want to read about? And then the last one is what can I be paid for? What do I have that's valuable that people want to buy? And the idea is that you want to find something at the intersection of all of those things. If you put all those 4 circles together in a Venn diagram, what's at the middle? And so for me, I had this experience helping entrepreneurs. I had the knowledge. I had the enjoyment and the love for doing that. I found that there was this unmet demand, and really that there weren't any books out there on that subject for people to read about. And I quickly found out that people were willing to pay for it. So for me, I was able to find that sort of sweet spot. I also think this also goes to the idea of finding a niche, which is really important in nonfiction writing. I didn't come up with this, so I heard someone else say it, but they said, the riches are in the niches. The riches are in the niches. And they said that mostly in a business context of, find a niche industry to work in. But I think it's true in writing as well, is that, there's so many things, particularly in nonfiction, that have already been written about. What is your specific thing? What is your specialty? Because that's what, people are out there trying to find. Now, I do think it's possible to go a little too niche, and I've been guilty of doing that before. Obviously, if you go too niche, there's not going to be anyone there to read it. But find a niche. And then the last thing I would mention is, again, advice for a new writer. There's a lot you can do yourself to minimize costs. I was surprised at how low cost I could write a book, given that I self-published, did the cover design myself, did all those things. It's great to be able to minimize your costs on that, but don't go cheap on getting an editor. Make sure that that's something that you invest in, because it's going to reflect in the quality of your work. It's one of the very first things you'll read on Amazon in the reviews. Sometimes people will say, well, this book was poorly edited, or there was a spelling or a grammar issue. So always invest in a good editor.
And it makes people mad too. Go read some of my reviews. They get mad. They get really mad. By the way, I'm looking at your book cover. I have it off to the side. It'll be up when we start this. I mean, it's an ingeniously brilliant book cover. So congratulations. That really
Thank
looks
you. Yeah, there's
fantastic.
a beautiful picture on the front of a coral reef, and to me, the coral reef is kind of a great image for a thriving entrepreneurial community. That you have all of these entrepreneurs, these vibrant fish who are working collaboratively in this and growing this community. So that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and some ratio of them get eaten.
Occasionally, that does happen.
Well, look, hey, that's the world out there. So that's great. All right, well, I appreciate it, Ryan. Thank you for spending 20 minutes with us, and I will put links to. Oh, can you send me a link to? I'm not even going to try and say the Japanese theory thing, but if you can send me a link to that, I'll post it below this too, because I found that pretty interesting, and I like the fact that it included. I call it monetization. It's the same exact concept, which is do all the things you like, but you got to eat, right? So yeah, figure out a way to
That's
get
right.
paid for it. That's good. Okay, sir. Well, thank you very much. And maybe we can do another one of these. And when you
That
next
sounds
book
great,
comes
and
out.
congratulations to you, David, on all of your success and all of your books that I see there in the background. You're doing amazing, and I love all of your books. I had the honor of reading one of your very first books, and leaving.
You
I think I
did.
left
You did.
one of the very first Amazon reviews, and now you've become
You
such a
left.
big success. I have the claim to fame of being your first Amazon review.
You do have the claim to fame to being my first Amazon review. Success would be a strong leap, but certainly, just like anything, I keep doing it. So just like you, right? It's your best book is your next book.
That's
what I
right.
tell people. And one day I might have a good book. So we'll see. All right, Ryan. Thank you, sir, and
That's
I'll be
great. Thanks,
talking to you.
David.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for watching. Please consider hitting the subscribe button.